Hi, love. I'm Arya Nova. Before I begin, I need to say this. This episode contains emotional accounts of psychological abuse, trauma bonding, and coercive control, particularly between parent and child, and later, between partners. If that's sensitive for you, please take care as you listen. This is a sacred space, and your safety matters more than anything else. Let me tell you a story. It's not mine, but it could have been. That's how familiar it feels. That's how many women I meet who've lived it. This is Hannah's story. A woman raised to believe that love meant shrinking, that speaking up meant betrayal, that pleasing others was survival. She didn't fall in love with a monster. She fell in love with a man who reminded her of home. And that was the most dangerous part. She was the strong one. That's what people called her. The strong friend, the calm one, the achiever, the one who could handle anything. She got good grades, kept her room spotless, didn't cause trouble, never talked back. On the outside, she looked like a golden child. On the inside, she was walking on glass. Her mother, Janice, was elegance dipped in ice, always poised, always polished, always performing. She loved compliments. She hated being questioned. And she didn't raise a daughter. She sculpted one. Every smile was staged. Every hug came with strings. Every I love you had conditions. From as early as Hannah could remember, she felt like an accessory, a trophy, something to be displayed when it made Janice look good, and hidden when it didn't. If Hannah cried, she was dramatic. If she spoke up, she was disrespectful. If she pulled away, she was ungrateful. Her mother didn't need to yell to control her. She just needed to raise an eyebrow. Hannah learned young. Peace came when she performed, when she obeyed, when she became the mirror her mother wanted to see. One night, when she was 10, she wrote in her journal, "If I smile enough, maybe she'll stop being mad. If I'm perfect, maybe she'll love me for real." Those are the thoughts of a little girl trying to earn safety. She never knew what version of her mother she'd get, the charming one who baked cookies for the church ladies, or the cold one who wouldn't speak for 3 days because Hannah didn't iron her blouse properly. Janice didn't hit her, but she cut her down with silence, with icy glares, with subtle shame that wrapped around Hannah's spine and stayed there. And the saddest part? No one saw it, because Janice was adored, respected, elegant. She chaired fundraisers and smiled wide in family photos. No one saw the way she chipped away at her daughter behind closed doors. No one noticed that Hannah flinched when her mom walked into the room. Not even Hannah. Because that was just normal. That was love. So when Hannah turned 25 and met David, she didn't fall for him blindly. She fell for what was familiar. He was older, sophisticated, calm, never loud, but always in control. He made her feel like she was being seen, chosen, and she mistook that control for stability. David listened the way her mother never had, and he validated her in the beginning, like she was his favorite person in the world. But soon, the rules began. Tiny, subtle, wrapped in charm. Don't wear that. It's not very professional. Why do you still talk to your college friends? They're not on your level. I love that you're not like other women. You don't need all that makeup and attention. At first, Hannah thought, he just wants the best for me. She didn't see it for what it was, control cloaked in compliments. There's a psychological term for this, trauma reenactment. It's when we subconsciously gravitate toward relationships that echo our unresolved childhood wounds. Not because we enjoy the pain, but because the pain is familiar. Hannah wasn't weak. She was conditioned. Her nervous system had been wired to equate love with walking on eggshells. And David? He handed her the same eggshells in a different house. In her early journal entries, she wrote, "I feel like I'm living in a dream, but sometimes it's a dream I can't wake up from. He's so wonderful, but I never know what mood he's in. It's like I'm always trying not to ruin the good moments. This is how the cycle begins, not with violence, with inconsistency. David was the hero in public, the loving husband, the provider. He gave to charities, showed up at work events, posted family photos with long captions about how blessed he was. But at home, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He just withdrew, corrected, disapproved. And Hannah? She tried harder, smiled wider, worked to fix whatever made him cold, because that's what daughters of narcissistic mothers do. They hustle for love. They earn peace. They perform safety, even when it's breaking them. The fog was lifting. Not all at once. No, that would have been too merciful. But slowly, like the sting of sunlight after days in a windowless room. Hannah had spent years surviving, adapting, making herself palatable to a man who mirrored the very wounds she'd inherited. And yet, even in the midst of her numbness, a whisper had begun. A voice, faint but undeniable. This can't be all there is. She didn't say it out loud, not yet, but it pulsed in her chest like a second heartbeat. And that was the beginning. Because the moment a woman questions the cage, even silently, even internally, that's when the unraveling begins. She had become so accustomed to shrinking. At the dinner table, when Caleb would dismiss her ideas, "That's not really relevant, babe," she'd laugh it off. When he corrected her in front of their kids, "Don't listen to your mother, she's always overreacting," she'd swallow the humiliation. When he punished her with silence for a misstep, she'd tiptoe through the hours, cooking his favorites, offering to rub his shoulders, trying to soothe the storm she didn't cause. And when she cried, he'd sneer, "Are you seriously making this about you?" It wasn't just the words. It was the slow erasure of her reflection. "I don't know who I am anymore," she wrote in her journal one night. "I miss the girl who used to dance in the kitchen just because the sun was out. I miss her laugh. I think he stole it." Let me explain something gently, but clearly. This isn't about weakness. It never is. This is about programming. When you grow up in a home where love is conditional, where silence is safer than honesty, where emotions are treated like landmines, you don't just walk into adulthood with a clean slate. You carry that training into every relationship, especially the ones that feel familiar. Familiar doesn't mean safe. It means known. And the nervous system craves what it knows, even if what it knows is pain. This is how trauma bonding works. It's not logical. It's biological. Your body bonds to the very person hurting you because they are also your only source of comfort, however twisted that comfort may be. The same man who yells at you, belittles you, controls you, will also kiss your forehead and whisper, "You know I love you, right?" And your brain clings to that scrap of tenderness like a lifeline. That's not love. That's survival. The shift for Hannah didn't come with a scream. It came with a whisper from her daughter. "Mommy, are you okay?" That question. So simple. So devastating. Because children know. They always do. Her daughter had seen too much. Felt the tension in her mother's muscles when Caleb walked through the door. Heard the tone he used. Watched the light fade from Hannah's eyes. Hannah hugged her tighter that night and cried silently while her daughter slept in her arms. And the next day, she opened a blank journal and wrote one sentence. "I have to get out." But getting out isn't simple when the world thinks your life is perfect. Caleb was a master of image, clean-cut, involved dad, charming at church, always polite in public. Behind closed doors, he was surgical with cruelty, never bruises, just erosion, and people loved him. So when Hannah began reaching out, carefully, cautiously, she was met with confusion. Her sister said, "Caleb? Really? He's such a great guy." A friend told her, "You sure you're not being too sensitive? You've always been a little emotional." Even her own mother said, "Well, he's a provider, isn't he? Maybe just try harder. Marriage is hard work. The silence screamed louder than any slap ever could. But Hannah had one lifeline, her childhood friend, Mariah. They hadn't been close for years, but something told Hannah she could trust her. Mariah didn't ask, "Are you sure?" She asked, "How can I help?" And those words cracked something wide open. For the first time, Hannah said it out loud. "He doesn't hit me, but I feel like I'm dying." Let me pause and name something. Just because he doesn't raise a fist doesn't mean it's not abuse. Emotional abuse is abuse. Coercive control is abuse. Chronic invalidation is abuse. Weaponized silence, manipulation, gaslighting, forced isolation, these are all tools in the abuser's kit. And what makes them so dangerous is that they're invisible. To everyone else, he's a saint. To you, he's the reason you cry in the shower, question your worth, and feel like you're losing your mind. After that night, Hannah began documenting. In a password-protected file on her phone, she wrote everything down. The way he'd withhold affection for days. The way he blamed her for his moods. The way he turned their children against her subtly. Mom's just being difficult again. She kept screenshots, took voice memos, began researching trauma-informed therapists. She didn't call it a plan. Not yet. She called it gathering clarity. But clarity is the first act of rebellion. And then came the journal entries. She started writing to herself, not the broken version she saw in the mirror, but the girl she used to be. The one who loved thunderstorms and yellow dresses and soft indie music. She wrote, "I haven't forgotten you. I'm trying to find you again." I promise that promise became her anchor. Because when you've been gaslit for years, even believing your own pain feels radical. Mariah helped her find a therapist, a woman who understood trauma bonding and emotional abuse. And the therapist said something that changed everything. "You are not crazy. You are conditioned." That sentence was a key. Suddenly, every memory, every feeling, every reaction made sense. It wasn't weakness. It was adaptation. She wasn't broken. She was surviving. Over the weeks that followed, Hannah started reclaiming small pieces of herself. She wore her favorite lipstick again, even though Caleb said it was too much. She sang while doing dishes. She took long walks alone. She read poetry. And with each act of resistance, her reflection sharpened. She wasn't invisible anymore. But Caleb noticed, and he didn't like it. The tighter she held her ground, the more subtle his tactics became. "I'm worried about you, babe. You've been acting different. You know I love you, right? But sometimes I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore." He started showing up unexpectedly, checking her phone, questioning her every move. But by then, she wasn't afraid. She was preparing. And then came the day she found the old journal from her college years, back when she was writing poetry on napkins, back when she believed in love that didn't require self-erasure. Inside, there was a line she'd written at 19. "Never stay somewhere that requires you to become less than who you are." She cried for an hour, not because she was broken, but because she remembered, and remembering is how we return to ourselves. That's where I'll pause, because this isn't the end, not even close. In part 3, we'll walk with Hannah through the moment she leaves and the storm that follows, custody battles, courtroom manipulation, the war that comes after escape. But for now, hold this truth close. Every step you take toward remembering who you are is a revolution. And revolutions start with whispers. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Let me tell you what they don't warn you about. When a woman leaves an abusive relationship, especially one wrapped in charm, manipulation, and control, the world doesn't always cheer her on. No, sometimes it turns on her. That's what happened to Hannah. When she left, she thought the worst was over. She thought escaping the house meant escaping the harm. But the truth? The harm just changed forms. Her ex used the one thing he still had access to, the courts. He filed for emergency custody within 4 days, claimed she was unstable, that she had mental health issues and was trying to alienate the kids. He called her paranoid, erratic, dramatic, and he looked so calm on the stand, so believable, because abusers know how to perform. They've been rehearsing their whole lives. And Hannah? She was exhausted, anxious, shaking, struggling to even speak clearly, because that's what trauma does. It scrambles your nervous system. It makes you forget your own name under pressure. But in court, presentation is everything. They didn't ask her about the silent treatment that lasted for weeks, or the financial control, or the threats that weren't physical, but psychological. Good luck proving anything. No one will ever believe you. You're unstable, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. No, the court didn't ask. And Hannah, heart pounding in her chest, didn't know how to explain the abuse that left no bruises. She lost temporary custody that day. Her babies, were handed to a man who had manipulated and controlled every inch of her life. And for the first time, she didn't just feel broken, she felt punished for surviving. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I got out of the cage, and now the system is trying to shove me back in." And this is where the next chapter begins. Let's talk about legal abuse. It's a tactic used by narcissistic or abusive partners to weaponize the legal system against their victims, delaying hearings, demanding custody, filing false reports, dragging out the process until the woman is emotionally and financially drained. Hannah's ex did all of that. Every time she started to get her footing, another letter arrived, another court date, another accusation. She couldn't sleep, could barely eat. Her hair started falling out in clumps. She dropped weight. Her therapist gently suggested she may be in complex PTSD, and I want to explain that term. CPTSD isn't just about one traumatic event. It's about repeated harm, prolonged emotional captivity, the kind where the trauma is subtle, chronic, and relational. Hannah described it like this: "It's like being haunted, not by him, but by who I became around him." She'd walk into the grocery store and freeze because she thought she saw his car. She couldn't answer phone calls from unknown numbers without shaking. She stopped trusting her own instincts. She stopped trusting people altogether. But the worst part? People didn't understand. Her family thought she was being dramatic. Her mom said, "Well, you chose him." Her sister said, "Can't you just co-parent?" Even her pastor told her, "God hates divorce." And Hannah, who was already drowning, felt the world grab the hose. So she stopped talking, started isolating. And in that silence, the old voices came back. The ones from childhood. The ones that said she was too sensitive, too much, a burden. And that's when she hit her bottom. There was a day, she told me, it almost ended. She sat in the car, parked near the courthouse, and thought, if I disappear, maybe that's the only way this ends. But then, she looked at a photo on her phone. Her daughter, gap-toothed grin, cheeks full of hope, and she realized if she gave up, he would win, and her daughter would grow up thinking this is love. So Hannah did the hardest thing she's ever done. She got back up. It didn't happen overnight. She started with a trauma-informed lawyer who believed her. She began gathering evidence, old texts, emails, voice memos, journal entries. She worked with her therapist to write a custody impact statement. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. She documented every instance of manipulation. When he didn't show up for visits, then blamed her. When he sent flowers to the school to make her look unstable. When he posted on social media pretending to be the victim. And finally, the judge started to see the truth. It took 8 months, but she regained custody. Full, legal custody. She cried in the courthouse bathroom for 20 minutes, not because she was happy, but because she could finally exhale. Now let's talk about what comes after, because just getting your kids back doesn't erase the damage. She had panic attacks in Target, couldn't hear a male voice raise in public without flinching, would wake up at 2 a.m., sweating, dreaming that he'd taken the kids again. She had to rebuild her nervous system, one breath at a time, one safe person at a time, one tiny act of trust at a time. And the guilt? It didn't go away either. Guilt for staying, guilt for leaving, guilt for what the kids saw, guilt for not being stronger sooner. But here's what Hannah learned. Survival isn't shameful, silence isn't strength, and healing isn't linear. She started writing again. She joined a support group, women who knew her story without her having to explain it. She stopped trying to convince people who'd never been in the fire. She stopped minimizing what happened. She started reclaiming her voice, and in her journal she wrote, "I don't want to be a woman who escaped. I want to be a woman who rose. And now I want to say this to you. If you're in the storm, if you've been through the fire, if you've lost your children, your sanity, your sense of self, this story isn't here to scare you. It's here to say, you're not broken, you're not overreacting, you're not alone, you're awakening, and the system might not be built for us. But our stories, they're louder than the silence, so speak, write, tell, because every time a woman like Hannah survives, she makes it easier for another woman to escape. This is her exit story, and we'll be back next week with another one. Until then, stay safe, stay awake, stay free.